Hello, and welcome to a very easy tutorial on how to deploy your full-stack React application to Heroku with a Postgres database. My name is Brady, and today I'll be walking you through how to deploy to Heroku. There are some prerequisites to know. So both your database and your code will be on the same Heroku app. If it is not, don't worry. During the tutorial, I'll show you how to connect them both to the same Heroku app. Now, this tutorial does require very particular code, so please follow along closely and pay attention. Some tutorials have you create 2 package.json files. This tutorial will only require 1, so that's nice. Now, my application will be using these technologies. If you are not using SQLize and instead using like Massive, GraphQL, or another technology, don't worry, it will still work. With all that said, let's jump into Heroku and see what's going on. Alright, this is our Heroku app that we have created, and as you can see, I already have the Heroku Postgres database add-on installed, and I'll go in here real quick and I'll show you just kind of what's going on in my database. I only have one line or one row in my database, and that's just to show you that this theory works, okay? I didn't want to input tons of data just for a tutorial. So we just have one row in there, and we will be using our application to access that row of data. And then for your, what am I trying to say? The credentials for your .env file that you'll be using, you can access those credentials right here. Since this is a tutorial and I will be deleting this later, I will show you the credentials. For our purposes, I'm using the URI inside of my .env. I'll show you that later when we get to the actual code. But as you can see, let's go over here to deploy, and we do not currently have anything deployed to this web application. So we will actually use our GitHub when we're ready to deploy our code. So let's go ahead, let's pull up our VS Code, and I will show you the code. Alright, so here we are inside of our VS Code, and the first thing I want us to look at is right here, our root folder. It should be set up like this. You should have a source folder with all of your code, which Create React App will do for you. Your server folder should also be on that same level, and then your .env will be on that same level as well. And so I'm just going to give you a quick look at what my code is doing. And so it's a very simple application. In fact, I changed almost very little. And so here you can see I have a button click that will send an Axios call to my database. And if I get a response from my database, then we're going to set info, okay, which is a state I'm accessing up here. And down here I have a conditional statement, a ternary, and essentially if info is defined, we're going to display info, but if it's not defined, we are going to display Heroku deployment example. So when we get into my actual application, you'll see this text initially, and when we click the button, that text will change, indicating that it has in fact worked. And then if it doesn't work, we should see an alert that says no connection or data. So that's the overview of the application I'm using. But let's go ahead, let's take a look at our server folder. Now I have split up my main server folder and my SQLize just to kind of clean up the code a little bit. And so you can see this is where I'm keeping all of my SQLize code. Yours will look different depending on how you're setting it up, if you're using SQLize, Massive, GraphQL. But the main thing we want to look at is right here in the main server folder. So I have commented some stuff out and in, but as you can see, pretty basic server folder, okay? Main things we want to look at here is you will need 2 lines of code in your server folder. The first one is going to be here on line 11. app.use, express.static, path.resolve, directory name, /build, okay? Now, what this is referencing a folder that does not exist yet, and we'll get to that in a minute. But for the meantime, write this out. This is going to be what you will want. And then I have my single endpoint for accessing my database, and I'm just, getting all of the data from that one row. And the second bit of code is right here, lines 19 through 21. So I'll comment those back in. And this is going to be what I call a catch-all. Okay, so anything from your base URL, anything after that, right? That's what our splat is doing. Is we're sending from the build folder the index.html. Okay, and so you'll want to copy this code, and this goes after all of your other endpoints. Okay. If this goes before your endpoints in any way, like let's say you put it right here, okay, it will not work. It has to be after all of your endpoints, okay? Perfect. Now, down here, when you do app.listen down here in the bottom, okay, it is very important that you do a port all caps. And the reason why is Heroku is looking for a keyword in your code with the all caps port. Some people will try to do server port or database port or other terms, and it will not work because Heroku is looking for this word, all caps. And so please put it in all caps, and then Heroku will be able to put its own port in there for accessing your database. Okay, that is all the code you need. So just kind of an overview, you will need line 11 right here. You will need lines 19 through 21. And you will need all caps port. Let's go ahead and let's go look at our package.json, because this is... Actually, before we look at our package.json, I do want to show you my .env file. Again, normally you want to have all of this hidden. I really don't care because I'm going to be deleting this. So let's go ahead, let's look at our .env, and I have two items in here. It is very important you title your database or your URI string to be database URL. And the reason why that is because, again, Heroku is looking for a very specific word. It's looking for, all caps, database underscore URL. And when it finds that, for instance, over here in my SQLized folder where I reference it, okay, it will then be able to replace that with the URI string that Heroku has, because our .env file does not get uploaded. And then temporarily, I have port here is 5432. That gets replaced when Heroku finds the word port and puts its own port number in there. So these two things are really all you need in your .env file. Now, let's go ahead, let's look at our package.json, and we'll need a few lines of code in here. So the first line of code is right here, and I put mine directly under the version line, but you're going to want to input main is ./server, and then whatever your main server file is called. Mine is called index.js. So this is referencing what is the main file we're serving, and we're serving the server as the main file. And then when we create a build, the build will be the front end. And so you'll want to type that in and make sure you put a comma after it. Rookie mistake is not putting a comma, because then the rest of it just goes and doesn't work. So make sure you put a comma. All right, and then down here, we're going to want to put a different line of code in here for start. So normally, for here, you will see this line of code, React script start, and instead we're going to replace it with this. We're going to replace it with node server index.js, or whatever your server file is called, and npm build. This is going to do two things. When you deploy a bit of code to Heroku, there's two things you can do. You can have a proc file here that will tell Heroku what to start, or you can forget the proc file and it will automatically do npm start. Okay. Now our start command was React script start. We got rid of that, and what we're telling it to do when Heroku says npm start, we want it to start up the server folder and create a build version of our code. Okay, and that build version is going to be a little bit faster, a little bit more condensed, and it's better for a production scenario. Okay. Now this line of code right here where I have go, I just put that in for local testing so I can do npm run go, and I don't have to worry about resetting this line of code or anything else. So this is completely optional for local development, but for deployment, this is the line of code you want here on line 24. All right. And with that, we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and let me go back to Heroku, and we will deploy our code and see if it works. Okay, so here I am. I'm back on Heroku, and I am on the Deploy tab. And this is the same place where we have our database set up. That is very important. So wherever your database is on your app, that's where we're going to deploy. So we're going to come down here to GitHub, and what did I name it? How to deploy. That's what I called it. So find your bit of code on GitHub, and let's go ahead. Let's connect it, and let's go ahead, and we're going to come down here to deploy branch. You can set up automatic deploys if you wish. For this tutorial, I will not. So let's go ahead. Let's deploy, and we will wait for that to deploy. Okay, our app was successfully deployed. Everything worked, no errors. And so let's go ahead and we're going to open up the application. And as you can see, very simple application. And so according to our code, currently we haven't accessed the database because this is the text we're seeing. And so if we click here, and hey, this is info inside of our database. It works. So if you followed all the steps correctly and input all of the code, your database should work when it's deployed. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope it helps because there is some scarce info on how to deploy these things to Heroku, and I hope you're able to access all of your needs here. But anyway, thank you guys again so much for watching. Drop any comments if you have any suggestions for me, and I will see you later. Bye!